All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, the NFC and maybe even the entire NFL, or at least the teams that are in the playoffs right now, may rue the day that the Philadelphia Eagles decided that they were going to go with Nick Foles and just put Carson Wentz on the shelf. Because a champion is very, very difficult to finish off. You can hurt a champion, but it's very difficult to defeat a champion, especially because they're so accustomed to the throne. So when they're put in adverse situations, just off of reflex, they're going to do things that are going to put them in the position to, at the very least, have the chance to win. And I believe that the Philadelphia Eagles are a wild card in more ways than one. Nick Foles makes them very dangerous. You can tell that their entire receiving core believes that they have a chance to receive the football, which means that they're going to run their routes much more proficiently, as opposed to Carson Wentz, who pretty much was starting to develop one of these Tony Romo, Jason Witten dynamics with their tight end, Zach Ertz. Well, he was just throwing to him every play. And what that does is that takes a lot of the verve away from your receivers when they see that the quarterback is just going to dump off to the tight end every play. You have to try to stretch the field and feed your receivers, especially since the Philadelphia Eagles have a very prominent receiving core. They're not the most famous in the world, but they are very, very effective if you utilize them. So this game between the Eagles and the Chicago Bears is very interesting. As of right now, I'm going to pick the Chicago Bears to win by a score of 20-14. I think their defense may find a way to finally nullify Nick Foles. But if the Eagles were to win, it'll probably be, I would say 24-21 or 23-20. It would not shock me. But right now, I'm going to pick the Bears.
So many wondering if Nick Foles can find the magic again for the defending champs. He has won 5 consecutive games as an underdog, including all 3 games last postseason. He'll be looking to become the 5th starting QB in the Super Bowl era to win 4 straight playoff games as an underdog when he takes the Bears this weekend in Chicago. So, Max, if he beats the Bears, is there a quarterback controversy in Philadelphia?
No, actually there's not. There won't be a quarterback controversy until next season. A controversy is when you don't know who you're going to play. If Nick Foles wins this Sunday or whenever they're playing, there's not going to be any controversy. Carson Wentz is going to sit his ass down until Nick Foles shows that he's completely unable to decipher and discern what the defense is showing him. He would have to have an abysmal first half for Doug Peterson to even consider inserting Carson Wentz right now, because it's very clear that Nick Foles has that mojo. That's why I state they are a wild card. If the Eagles were to go into Chicago and defeat the Bears, they automatically become a major problem. And it would be very interesting to see how they would fare in LA or back in New Orleans, where they got blown out previously with Carson Wentz at quarterback. Because when the defense believes in the quarterback, they play harder. They play like a top-notch defense. And we saw that when Nick Foles got inserted, Howie Long's son built that blasphemous shrine in the locker room for Nick Foles. So it's very clear that the defense feels a certain way about Nick Foles.
Yes, there is. And I'm not saying what side of the controversy I'm on, but to deny that there's a quarterback controversy is ridiculous. Guys, the Eagles, for whatever reason, and maybe it's because Carson Wentz, it's the curse of the gifted. He can do so many things. Maybe Peterson gets in his own way.
Let me say this very quickly. Carson Wentz is only going to be able to skate on this notion that he's super talented for a couple more years. He's going to have to produce, especially next season. There will be a quarterback controversy if Nick Foles were to take the Philadelphia Eagles on another magic carpet ride in this postseason. There will be another major quarterback controversy. One of them will have to go if Nick Foles were to get them back to the Super Bowl. No doubt about it.
In terms of like the kind of stuff they're trying to do, and they simplify it for Foles. But, you saw the RPOs work with Chip Kelly with Nick Foles. They brought it back last year. It worked with Nick Foles to the tune of a Super Bowl. They were dead in the water. Nick Foles takes over under center or takes over at quarterback.
And, we hear this a lot from many of these NFL pundits that Doug Peterson simplified the playbook for Nick Foles. Well, did he really simplify it, or was it overly complicated for Carson Wentz?
And now they're in the playoffs, and you mean to tell me that if Nick Foles, because if he wins one playoff game right now.
Or was Carson Wentz given too many liberties, too much freedom? Because the offense that he was running did not look complicated at all. Basically, it was handed to the running back, second and long, throw it to Zach Ertz, 3rd and long or 3rd and short, throw it to Zach Ertz again, punt the football.
Right now, that's already like a little playoff run. And he winds up 4-1 lifetime in the playoffs for the Eagles. You mean to tell me that Carson Wentz, who is injury prone, who has never won a playoff game for the Eagles, you mean to tell me that Nick Foles is not at least causing a controversy? Guys, what?
No, not now. There's no controversy right now, Max Kellerman, because they have no other option other than Nick Foles. Now, if he continues to win, and say, for example, if they were to win the Super Bowl again, now you have a controversy on your hands, because now it's, what do? You have a number 1 overall draft pick in Carson Wentz, who has shown that he can play at an MVP caliber. You also have Nick Foles, who's a winner. So what do? That's a hypothetical question that I'm sure they would love to have to answer, because that would mean that they're back-to-back champions.
What I just mentioned about the strategy and the results and everything ignores the fact that Nick Foles also has something about him that seems to, Stephen A., as you would say, galvanize the team. He seems to uplift them. They seem to click as a unit.
For those of you brothers who go back watching the NFL long enough, you remember that I believe it was in 1995, Jim Harbaugh took over as quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts and almost got them to the Super Bowl. They had an AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh, and on the last play, he threw a Hail Mary that bounced off of his wide receiver's stomach. It was crazy. But Jim Harbaugh was one of those guys, and people think of him now just as a head coach, but he also was a very, very effective, very good quarterback back in the day, back in the 90s. And he was almost able to, have that same type of Nick Foles energy where he almost took that team to the Super Bowl. So sometimes, you have those type of quarterbacks. They come in and the team just rallies around him.
And that's maybe part of his personality, too. There will absolutely be a quarterback controversy in Philadelphia if Nick Foles beats the Bears, the sleeper team that everyone, the sexy sleeper team, picked to win the Super Bowl now. Yes, there will be a quarterback controversy.
No, there won't. Because even if Carson Wentz believes that he's healthy, he'd be a fool to demand his job back after Nick Foles were to have gotten them into the playoffs and then won a playoff game. He'd be a complete fool. So there would be no controversy. There'd be a lot of talking by you guys on TV, but Carson Wentz, if he was smart, would fall back, because at the end of the day, he's 25, 26 years old. He was the number 1 overall draft pick. There would be a bevy of teams calling up the Eagles for his services after this season, so all he would have to do is sit tight. That's if he was smart.
I don't believe so. And the reason I don't believe so is because I think everybody knows that the mind's eye shows you that Carson Wentz is a better quarterback when healthy. So the question is,
well, he's more naturally gifted. I'm not quite sure if he's better.
Carson Wentz were healthy, do you believe that he would be incapable of doing what you see Nick Foles doing? That answer would be no. We have to remember that Nick Foles started the first 2 games of this season in the NFL, this particular season coming off the Super Bowl win. They were 1-1. They beat the Atlanta Falcons to open the season, and then after that they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That's true, but that's also a very small sample size. Let the record show that at one point the Cowboys were 3-5 and Dak Prescott looked like the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. Now fast forward, we're about to head into the playoffs, and Dak Prescott is one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL. So who knows what kind of season Nick Foles could have had if he would have maintained that starting seat.
And during that game, and then after that, he came back when Carson Wentz went down again and, basically helped the Eagles secure the last 3 wins or whatever. But the issue is Carson Wentz's health. And that's the only thing that will create controversy. How much Nick Foles is going to be 30, he's only 29. How much faith should we have in Carson Wentz if Carson Wentz is going to continue to get hurt? That's it. In terms of ability, you don't see Nick Foles doing the things that Carson Wentz does. And because of it, Doug Peterson...
I agree, sir. We don't see Nick Foles doing the things that Carson Wentz does. We see Nick Foles spreading the football around. We see Carson Wentz just throwing the football to Zach Ertz because that's his hunting buddy.
Is the guy under the microscope, because anybody who watches the NFL and knows the NFL, particularly you, Darren, knows that Doug Peterson calls a different game when Carson Wentz is behind center.
Yes, Doug Peterson calls a different game when Nick Foles is under center. Different as in smarter game.
Doug Peterson wants Carson Wentz to do it all and get everybody involved.
Well, then both Peterson and Carson Wentz are failing because Carson Wentz is not getting everybody involved.
Nick Foles, you can have your favorite target in Alshon Jeffrey. You can slip.
I'm trying to figure out what game is Stephen A. Smith watching because Carson Wentz barely throws the football to his wide receivers. Right before the trading deadline, they traded for that cat from Detroit, Golden Tate, who's a great receiver. People forget that he's there because Carson Wentz is not thrown to him. They've had Alshon Jeffrey for the last couple of years, who has a pair of the best hands in all of football. Carson Wentz was not throwing him the football. All of a sudden, Nick Foles comes in to replace Carson Wentz, and now Alshon Jeffrey looks like a Pro Bowler. So, what really is Stephen A. Smith talking about?
Slim the playbook a little bit and simplify things, and I think that's the difference, Darren.
Yeah, look, I think there's going to be a controversy. If Nick Foles goes in Chicago and wins this football game, there's going to be a controversy simply because of this. We've seen Nick Foles come in at the end of the season and make that Super Bowl run, playoff run, and Super Bowl run. If he could continue, if he can go into Chicago this week and beat a Bears defense, who we all feel like is one of the best defenses in the league, go to Chicago, win that football game. And
that's why I just don't see it. I see this game being somewhere around 23-13, maybe 2014, something like that.
And not only that, when you look at the way Nick Foles runs this offense, and the way Doug Peterson calls the game, everyone is live. It's not just Zach.
That's the point. That's why I say I have no idea what Stephen A. Smith is talking about.
Zach Ertz, who Carson Wentz loved to go to all the time. It's Nelson Aguilar becomes a factor now. It's Alshon Jeffrey. His last 3 or 4 games having a Pro Bowl season.
Thank you, sir. Golden Tate, I have no idea why they're not using him.
All of a sudden, he's come to life. There's something about Nick Foles, as far as, like you said, galvanizing the football team.
Everybody runs better routes because they know, wow, I have a chance to actually get the football if and when I get open.
The entire field, the entire real estate on that football field is open to plays when Nick Foles is in the game. And the defense seems to find a way to come back to life. I mean, there is something about Nick Foles as the quarterback of this football team. And I know, early in the season they went 1-1, but when you talk about getting this time of the year and they put a win together and beat Chicago and you have momentum going, there's absolute.
I agree. That's why when you see a champion struggling, you have to knock that champion out. You have to step it up. That's why Tyson Fury, that's why he got the draw. Because he fought stupid down the stretch. When you have a champion in trouble, you have to take advantage. Because a champion is going to show championship heart.
And let's not forget, he is 3-0 in the playoffs as a member.
Like Rudy Tomjanovich said back in the day, never underestimate the heart of a champion.
Member of the Eagles. We got much NFL. Do not leave because...
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how this game goes. Once again, I'm picking the Chicago Bears final score somewhere around 20-13, 23-13, maybe 20-14. Somewhere around there, but it's going to be at least a 1 touchdown difference. So peace.